Well, I guess we'll talk about my contrasting lives. You know, I would spend like the end of May through the end of August out east with my Aunt Fern and Aunt Eileen. And then I would come back to Illinois and spend the 9 months going to school with my Aunt Della and Uncle Oscar. Well, this was like going from day to night. Aunt Fern and Uncle John had servants. They had a maid, they had a butler, they had a gardener, they had a chauffeur. But Aunt Fern and Aunt Eileen was there to guide us along, take care of the children, and Uncle Glenn. They would see that we, more or less, they were our chaperones. And we just all had a really good time. And then I would return to my Aunt Della and Uncle Oscar, and this was like going from, like I said, day and night. Now, Aunt Della's home was spotless. I mean, she was a wonderful housekeeper, but I mean, she did everything herself. We had no bathroom. We had no running water. We had electricity, and it was just quite a reverse. But I don't know. I guess being a child, I didn't really. I didn't suffer, and I didn't say, "Oh, this is terrible. The world's coming to an end." I don't know. I was so happy to see Aunt Della and Uncle Oscar. I just fell right into the routine, and then when it come May, I knew I was getting ready to pack my suitcase because I was off to see Aunt Fern and Aunt Eileen. And I think that when you are young and you are thrown in situations where you would be served by butlers and you would have servants. I think the younger you are, the more you adjust. You just take for granted. And as far as embarrassment goes, there was none. I was a child when I did something wrong. They corrected me. I was never embarrassed. I think you get that when you get older, because I learned all my table manners and all my different things that I learned to curtsy out there. I remember Uncle John was, at this time, he was president of Philco, and he had, when there was a dignitary, I remember Don McNeil of the Breakfast Club in Chicago. Do you remember Don McNeil?
I don't.
Well, you should have, because he was very popular. Do you remember Don McNeil in the Breakfast Club?
Everybody listened to him.
Well, Philco was one of the big sponsors of this. He was in our home, Aunt Fern and Uncle John's home, and when there was a high dignitary being a guest in our home, children were never seen. We had our meals earlier, and it was usually done in, they had a breakfast room and a dining room. Of course, when I lived at Aunt Della, we had a kitchen table and we ate in the kitchen. But here I am, I'm eating in the dining room. We are to eat our meal and to go upstairs, and then Aunt Eileen and Uncle Glenn are to bring us down at a certain time, and we would be introduced to Don McNeil and some of his dignitaries, and that's what happened. That's how I learned to curtsy. Dodie curtsied, and I curtsied. And Johnny Bill, I don't know what Johnny Bill did. I think he ran up and ran down the banister again. But I mean, this was just part of this was the way they lived. It was a normal lifestyle for them. For Aunt Della, she would be on pins and needles, and she would be embarrassed about everything. Being a child, I took everything for granted. I was never embarrassed. I just learned. I learned different things, like when the relish tray come along, I knew you was to take your hands and take the vegetables out and put them on your plate. When the relish tray come for Aunt Della, and Aunt Della was there like in January, where we did not get celery and tomatoes at home because we would never buy expensive things. And here they had this beautiful relish tray, and they presented it to Aunt Della. Aunt Della was the guest, so she was served first, and the butler presented it to her, and she looked at it, and it was wonderful, and she wanted part of it, but there was no utensils to pick it up. So she said, "No, thank you." The next person that come along, they got in there with their hands. And she said, "I could have done that." But she was scared of making a mistake. That was the whole thing. And with a child, you don't have that. You're not scared of making a mistake. And so that was to my benefit. I learned, and I learned things that I kept with me the rest of my life.